Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me tonight is Double O Pixel, Mr. Pixel. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Excited to talk about this movie.
Yes, so tonight we are reviewing our continuing series of the James Bond films in order. As your host, Rob, I've seen all these 50 million times. I'm a huge Bond fan. I love discussing them. Mr. Pixel, who contributes greatly to the channel, kind of a neophyte, hasn't seen all the Bond films, has only seen some of them once, and he's that young millennial 20-something, so we have really divergent views, but some of the views that we definitely have together are the Bond's worth watching, especially for Tuesday today, Sean Connery. After we finish reviewing Thunderball tonight, we're going to go live with Outland, starring Sean Connery in a Western set in outer space. That'll be awesome, so check that out. Yeah, so Thunderball is the fourth film. This is the most financially successful film when you adjust it for inflation dollars, although Skyfall may have beat that just with inflation and all that. Monster hit. I have a love-hate relationship with this movie because there's so much I love about it. I think it's great, and then there's some things that would be to the detriment of the Bond franchise, in my opinion, that I don't like. But you know what? I'm more than happy to tolerate with, because we've established this pattern solidly since the last movie, and now we're going to be taking a look at just what we've come to know with James Bond and how well does it do it and how cool is it. So let's start off, Professor Pixel, with the opening gambit where Bond beats up a married woman in mourning.
Well, that's one way to put it.
Yeah, well, I mean, well, you know, widower. How would you call it?
Well, yeah, because at the beginning we see Bond at a funeral, and you can see on the coffin JB, the initials, and Bond, we pan up to the balcony up top overlooking the casket, and he has a new assistant named, what's her name? Paula. And if you didn't know this, Paula was actually in the last James Bond movie as one of the gypsy girls that were fighting.
Yummy.
Yeah. That's a little tidbit I found interesting. But this woman is led to her estate after, and Bond is there waiting for her. And whenever he goes over, I didn't know what to expect. It's Bond and it's a woman, so you expect a little something there. But then he just punches her in the face, and that's when it's revealed it's actually the guy that they claimed is in the casket, Jacques Bouchard or something.
Bouvier, I think, or something.
Yeah, and it's actually just him in drag. And there's a fight. He ends up. The widower takes the fire poker and is about to stab Bond. Bond gets the better of him and is like choking him out. And that's when he escapes. And he takes a jetpack from the back outside.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Flies down to see his lady Paula waiting for him. And that's when they drive off with a hose, hosing the people that are trying to chase him. And the water leads us into our intro.
Yeah, I do not like this opening gambit. It's a very good visual. I like the fact that he's beating up a widower from a funeral. That's cool. And even the jetpack is hokey and dated looking is fine. But this is where we get into some of the stuff I don't like about the Bond franchise, which is the gadgets and the drawing and how stupid it is. And I know it's a check your brain kind of thing, but I've always said I love the spy stuff a lot. So we'll talk more about that as this movie goes on, because this movie is very unique with what it does. And it definitely celebrates water, and that's just obviously something that's a major part of the movie. Without it, we wouldn't have Thunderball. Yeah, we have to talk about Tom Jones. I've always been a big Tom Jones mark. I've always grew up in a musician family where somebody like Tom Jones, who's a power singer, he's much like an Elvis Presley type, where he would sing stuff and cover it. The man's man. Every guy wants to be like him, and all the women want him, and he was one of the true first sex superstars that played up his male sexuality even more so than, like, say, an Elvis, who had those good boy looks and all that. But it's a fantastic song. It's absolutely tremendous. Tom nails it. We all know about the final note. Supposedly he passed out and all that, but it's got the ladies swimming in the water where you see their naked silhouettes and all that, and it's really sucks you in. It's very beautiful, and that's the one thing about this Bond film. I'll just say right off the bat, absolutely gorgeous film. I really, really enjoy the opening act though too, where we see in Paris, you see the guy with the eye patch, because that automatically makes him evil, and he sneaks into some back room, and of course we find out it's a beautiful set piece too. This is where they're going over all the stuff, and this is where we also talk about Austin Powers making a joke about it. It's like, well, why'd you call these guys here this really cool place to just to throw everything up when you could just do this whatever? But it's Bond, and we don't really care. We like it. Great opening set here where they talk about everything going on. We see him stroking the cat. We don't see his face. I believe it's Max von Sydow with the overdub on the voice. Really, really like this a lot too. But obviously we're dealing with Spectre. And the whole idea here is that they're going to have a couple atomic bombs, and they're going to try to use that as leverage to get what they want. And in doing so, they have to basically turn a guy. And that's what the whole first third of the act is. So I'm not a big fan of these gigantic, megalomaniac type bad guys, to be honest with you. I think it makes it a little hokey and cheesy as opposed to a little bit more serious or God forbid Cold War-ish, even though this is dressed up in that too. But it's very effective for what they're trying to do, and it makes sense at the time here in the mid-60s with what's going on. But what did you make of this whole Spectre thing before we move on?
I mean, I get what you're saying. At the same time, I feel like him making sure that each number is there in person whenever they're having this plot enacted. I think it's a good show of force. It shows that people are going out of their way. No matter what number one says, they go.
Yes.
But overall, I enjoy I do enjoy that. I mean, it's a little campy, but it's fun. It's fun. And I think if you take it a little too seriously, I could see why people don't enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think this movie is that way, and I think the opening gambit of the silliness of it, it's going to be that kind of film because they immediately go to where Bond's recuperating, and he's talking to Moneypenny because he sees a guy with a symbol, and he's like, I think it's a Tong symbol, or from a cow or whatever, some ancient symbol and all that. And he's checking out, and so he's going into Count Lippy's room, which is the person that's supposed to be working for Spectre, or that we know, but Bond's got to figure out. So he breaks in, he checks stuff out, and this is some of the stuff I've always liked about Bond, where they're doing a little bit of cat and mouse spy stuff, as I like to call it, without gadgets, just all sorts of other stuff. So you see a guy that comes out, and he's looking around because he thinks somebody's in his room. His face is all messed up. And what's really badass about this, and I remember seeing this as a kid going, no, they're taking forever to get this plot going. And I do like it. They're basically taking his eye and they're reconfiguring it in such a way where, it can be read due to all the safety protocols involved, so they can steal one of these bombs off of a plane. It's badass. And of course, Bond gets his usual little rapey self there when he's got the ladies checking him out stuff, and he gets sabotaged in the traction machine before he locks the guy up in the steam thing. But I don't know, there's something about Bond at a place like this that I just think is pretty funny, and I like it too.
So the woman here, Molly Peters, playing Trisha. Yeah, she is not your typical Bond girl. She is I don't want to say annoying, but she's a little annoying. After he's put on this table, a traction table, to help pull him a little bit, stretch him out. The guy speeds it up to such a point where he could have died. She comes in just in time to let him off, and that's when he takes her she's about to take him to the steam room, and he's like, well, my silence has a cost. And she's like, you don't mean. And he does. Then he goes to another room. That's where the man's in the private steamer. He goes ahead and locks it in. And that's finally where we are introduced to another character. I'm trying to remember his last name. I believe it's Duvall. He's the pilot.
Yep.
And in the room, there's this beautiful woman. I'm trying to remember her name. She's Fiona, and
My
she,
God. Oh
yes,
my God.
yes,
Wow. They're upping
she's the
their
one
game
in the
here.
tub for people who need reference.
Ooh.
But she gets a call. She picks it
It's a
up.
honeypot routine. She's
Mhm.
stringing him along on drugs and sex to get him to do whatever. Yeah.
And eventually he's about to go because he has to fly the plane that's going to be taking the two atomic bombs and take them away. But as soon as he opens the door, he sees himself.
Yes.
And he shoots him, and they handle him quickly. And that's when she's wrapping his face up, because the person whose face was wrapped up was basically cut up to look just like him.
Mm-hmm.
So after he's all wrapped up, the car arrives. The guy who isn't really Duvall, named Mr. Angelo, is pretty much getting in a plane, and that's what we see. But Bond, during this exchange, because they bring a private ambulance, he notices it after he's had his time with Miss Molly Peters. And quickly he says, I have to go out for some exercise. She's not happy to hear that, but it's the quickest excuse he can make, I suppose. But as he's going around, he's in the room, and we see the body of Duvall. He takes off the wrappings, and within that room, we see another guy, and he's just hiding behind the door, waiting. Yeah. And we think he's going to be the one to like jump out and try to do something. But there's a guy behind the window who tries to make a grab at Bond, and quickly Bond handles it, gets out of the room, pulls the fire alarm to clear the place out.
Yeah, good spy stuff. I really like this whole sequence here too, because it's always works. We get to see Bond thinking on his feet, being clever, not just a sex hound or whatever like he is. Him rubbing the lady with the mink gloves on or whatever. Oh, that's just tremendous too. And I think it's the first time we've seen Connery in a polo in one of these Bond films too, walking around. But yeah, now we know what the plot is. Then we get to see him going through the actual sabotaging of the plane that he's in, where he puts gas in the system and he downs it. This is all cool stuff. And a really big thing here is that growing up here in Central Florida, just west of Orlando, Florida, and you're in Central Florida as well, we know how hot and humid it is down here. We understand how people think Florida is an armpit, gets beat up in the media all the time, but there is a tropical beauty that Florida has that most states don't have, even if they have the southern feel to it, Georgia, Alabama, the Carolinas and such. And there's something to be said about the Bahamas and the whole Caribbean. Bond's definitely explored that. It was something that was very prevalent during the Cold War. And then here we're definitely have to mention it because it's a star of the show. This movie takes place basically in Nassau and everything, and reminds you of, like, say, Dr. No, for example. They've returned back to here, and it's great because this is one of the first movies that actually did any sort of filming underwater. You could talk about the TV show Flipper, which is filmed, I think, here in Florida, Creature from the Black Lagoon, a few others up there in Ocala, Silver Springs and whatnot. But this was, from everybody I know that was older when I was a kid, that when they talked about seeing this film, said the exact same thing. Nothing like it ever was on film like this, with all the underwater stuff that they're doing. So yeah, it's pretty cool too, because we see, like I say, that the plane's getting down there in the water and they cover it up, and we see Largo working on everything, and it's just okay. So now we get the setup of what's going on. We're about a fourth, almost a third of the way through the movie, where it's just setting it up and we're meeting all the characters. We're not quite there yet, but you see the underwater submarines and stuff that everybody's using. And again, for being filmed 40 years ago, longer really, actually 60 years ago, my God, 30, 50, 60 years ago, this stuff still looks really, really good. And it's as good as really anything in terms of the water today, because they sit there and they had a premium on watching what was going on, which is taking the bomb off the plane and then whisking it away and then covering things up. It's pretty neat. And like I say, it's still it's aged well despite how old the movie is too. So take with a grain of salt. Some of these underwater shots are fantastic, and we'll talk about the third act a little bit, but I like this whole setup here. What was your take?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think that like where it goes with it, it shows how diabolical Spectre really is.
Yeah.
Because I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Angelo, after he gets on the plane and he's flying it, they make sure that everybody else is taken care of. He flies it down, lands it in the water, and it's sinking to the bottom. And he is covered in water, but he has his air supply, and he's trying to unbuckle his belt, but he can't. That's when the divers come down. They're handling the bombs. One goes to him who's struggling, and he pulls out a knife to help cut off the seatbelt. So it looks like that's when they take the air hose and just split it right there.
Yep.
And this guy was demanding more money not an hour ago.
I did like that as a side angle. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, he gave 2 years of his life. It shows how much for 2 hours. 2 years of his life for 2 hours in an operation. And then they just
kill him. Heroin and sex. What a way to go out. Just saying. That's the reality of it.
Well, I don't think he got I don't think he got special time with Fiona. So
wow.
That was the real Duval. He got to go out with a bang. But they get the bombs out of there, and it seems like it's a success. Number one is pleased, as we learned from a phone call, and it seems that number two's operation is a go.
Yeah, this next scene here is with Bond, and he's being summoned back to headquarters so he can give his information, and he's letting them know what's going on, so we know he's going to be told to go there. And I've got to sit there and say, if you don't have an eye orgasm with this scene where Bond's sitting at this pseudo Knights of the Round Table type thing, and it's totally over the top, ostentatious, snooty friggin' meeting room, I don't know what to tell you, go kill yourself or something, because you're not going to find a better set piece than this. It's absolutely ridiculous. They're all sitting back. This is where they get the reel-to-reel, which is, the information, the way it gets passed on for the, hey, you got 7 days, you got to pay us 100 million pounds, whatever it is, the ransom note there too. And they're discovering how they're going to go about doing it and addressing with everybody in MI5. Of course, one of the gigantic paintings, and this is a giant map, it turns out, and they look for it. And this stuff's always cool to me. As a guy, I always loved maps, always loved it when they talked about it. As a kid, not really knowing everything, of course, not having the internet or you had encyclopedias, unless you're a complete nerd. When you saw stuff like this, you're like, oh, they're pulling out the maps. This is serious business. I could see in the background that they're in a big city. It's just cool, and this is the type of interface stuff I love from Bond. I love him dressing up, going to 5-star, 6-star hotels. He's got on His Majesty's Secret Service seal that he opens up with all the case files to it. This is just yeah, it's just awesome. It's so much fun at this point here too. And then of course he sees a picture, which we saw, like for example, and some of the other ones, of a beautiful woman that he knows he's going to have to end up making sweet, sweet love to be successful. A woman that looks like dressed in black and white. So before you get sent off, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, no. I'm just going to go on to the next scene, because he's supposed to go to Canada. Mm-hmm. That's where he's supposed to be stationed. But after seeing the girl in the photo, she noticed next to him Derval, the guy that he noticed in the wrappings.
Yep.
So afterwards, he's like, I need to go to Nassau. That's where I need to be, because that's where she is. And I met her brother, and he's dead. And the guy from Canada, who is just not happy to be there because this guy's not going to go with him after all, is like, oh, come on. He's like, but he was flying the plane. And M says, if Bond says he was dead, he was dead. But Moneypenny isn't amused, even though M allows him to go down to Nassau. And she says, you may be able to pull the wool over the old man's eyes, but I know exactly why you're going. That's when M comes out and he's like, I don't like you calling me old man, or implying that I don't know what I'm doing. But that quickly is the last side note before he goes down under the sea.
Yeah, this is where he meets Domino because he's a stalker, obviously. He knows how to find these women quick because I don't know how the hell he knew where she was going to be exactly. She conveniently gets her fin stuck into some coral. But it's just a nice little beautiful transition shot. Again, beautiful sceneries. It's aged very well. She's gorgeous. And a lot of times with Bond women, especially early on here in the franchise, they're so good looking and attractive without being trashy. You don't see anything other than a really tasteful dress, or in this case swim outfit or whatever, and it's a one-piecer too, which everyone thinks is fuddy-duddy, but all I'm going to sit there and say is she looks great.
It's in fact the suit that's right here in the thumbnail.
Yes. It's just the meat, because in the movie we got to have it. And Connery himself, even though he's wearing a hairpiece by this time and he's got massive chest hair, he was a bodybuilder. He's got a nice figure. He looks athletic. He looks like somebody that could get into a fight despite how bad they film him or whatever. And he kind of, with his contact, which is another woman, she's wearing a two-piece, he basically is like, oh, oops, our boat's not working. Can you take me to shore? And Domino, who we'll find more about later, is like all too eager to kind of sit there and let him see it. And one thing I wanted to point out too, we're going to talk about Outland live after this film review here. And I remember seeing Outland today going, I forgot Connery had this big tattoo on his right forearm, and you see it in here too. And I'm going, I had forgotten about it. I think he did have it, and I didn't think that was a Bond thing. I thought that was a Connery thing. But just a little detail that when you get a super high def copy and you rewatch something, you catch things that you missed before. Because as we see Domino taking Bond ashore, we see that there's a mysterious middle-aged white dude that we've not seen before watching them. And then we see, people going out, and it's just incredible scenery and backdrops. It's not these convoluted messes you see in film state. It's not very busy. It's an active place. Absolutely gorgeous. You feel like you're there. He's being a little pushy. He wants to have lunch with her, and they go to have lunch, and they're going back and forth. And I like this scene too, because he's like wanting the conch chowder stuff, and she thinks it's an aphrodisiac. She's Domino, and he's like, my dear Domino. And she's like, how'd you know my name? He's like, I saw it on your anklet. You're like, damn, he pulled that out of his ass.
I thought that her name was Dominique, but I think Domino is just her nickname, but I don't know. She's called Domino from this point out, and I just put her down as Dom from then on.
Yeah, it's he knows that she's being watched by a handler. She makes a do about all that too, but it's just a nice little leisurely extended scene about meeting a woman that's going to be a pivotal role in here, because she's obviously connected to this somehow. She's the brother of the person that Spectre ended up offing and had a doppelganger replacement, which is kind of cool. And so we know that, but we don't know where that's going. And then they cut to a scene with the boat pulling up at night, and he's all dressed up, and we get a nice little dinner dance kind of routine scene here. But let you take over the scene and describe what's going on as they go in.
So the place actually is a casino. Well, at least they have cards at the tables. And after winning a few hands, it seems that Emilio can't win a game. And he makes a comment like, you can't win them all. And eventually, Domino, seeing Bond from the man she met earlier today, she says, oh, well, Emilio, you promised to get me a drink. And that's when Bond says, well, I would like to buy her a drink if you would let me. And Emilio allows it. And so they share a drink. This is where she starts explaining her situation with Emilio and how she came to be under his guardianship, you could call it. And that's when she asks to dance and explains how she's leaving soon, the day after tomorrow. And they seem to be getting a little too cozy because Emilio comes out and she can tell he wants to leave. But as he takes her over, Emilio is trying to act friendly. They set a lunch for the next day for the three of them. And that's when Emilio pulls her out and says, I want to hear your entire conversation. And of course, she gives a little bit of information, but not too much.
Because she wants to bone Bond. That's why.
Yes.
And let's look. She's his mistress. She's a side piece. He's an older gentleman. He's suave, but there's no denying the fact that she's interested in him, or at least whoever this guy appears to be. But watching Bond and Largo go back and forth at the card table, they know who each other is. They're just doing it in a polite, civilized way, fighting appropriately. And I love that kind of stuff with Bond. It's fantastic. We have Bond, of course, all dressed up, taking her out, and she's just so elegant looking in here, but she's a whore. She's a side piece. And she's like, yeah, this is how I met him. I'm a little bored. The guy that Bond replaced at the table, though, is this kind of goofy, eyeballed looking guy, which turns out to be the celibate henchman of him too, that's watching them going on, although he's different than the guy that was her handler watching her while she was on shore. So he's doing his due diligence, checking everything out too. But yeah, this is just polite high society stuff. And how do you meet? And of course, we've got a clock running here as far as what Bond's got to do. So definitely made an impression at lunch. She's like, well, you can find me. She's just excited because of that little stranger danger sort of stuff going on with Bond, and Connery's just doing a phenomenal job with that. I really think he's definitely shown growth since the first film. And we mentioned before about how Goldfinger was, like, to me, that the template that they were definitely going to use going forward with the opening and how they did stuff, and this is following right along with it too. And nothing wrong with it. It takes its time. It's just awesome. He goes to the hotel room to see if he's got any messages, and chick give him the keys, like the one in Dr. No, where she's just kind of like eyeball them all, goo eyes and stuff. But when he gets to his room, we find out that he's got the old Bible encyclopedia thing that actually is a recording device, so he can hear that somebody's walking around. It's so silly and stupid. But I like these kinds of things. We always said when you have him in a room, that's neat. And he goes to check out what's going on, and he's got a super hot lady in the shower, and then he's got somebody almost saying his name, who turns out to be Felix Leiter, who was also, if you go back and watch the beach scene where he meets Domino, watching him as well too. So I think it's kind of, and actually I misspoke. It's not the hot chick. It's a hitman kind of guy. So yeah, jumping ahead to that.
It's this short little dude. I don't think I'd call him hot at all. So, but yeah, no, he quickly handles him. Leiter comes in, played by a different actor than last time, I'm pretty sure.
Leiter's like played by everybody in Hollywood, even Jack Lord.
Throw any man in there, okay. But he then throws the man out, and this leads to a. I really like the next scene because
it's awesome.
Yeah, because the guy Bond throws the guy out of his room and tells him, "Go ahead, report to Emilio." I can't remember his last name, and say what you saw. And the guy doesn't fess up at first. Whenever he goes to Emilio, Emilio's outside. He was shooting, but the guy is there, and he's right by the pool of sharks because Emilio needs a pool of sharks. This is very important to him.
That's what he does.
That's what he does. That's right. And after the man has so utterly failed him, Emilio says to just throw him in. And that's when they throw him on top of one of the sharks. Mm-hmm. Many sharks were harmed in the making of this movie. That's worth a mention. And that's when they bring out the red filter over the lens.
Yes, that's a great shot.
It's wonderful.
And we don't need to see him tore up, ripped limb from limb. We just need to have that to know that that's what's going on, because the idea of seeing the sharks there and this guy being a bad dude, mastering sharks is pretty badass. And it's like, okay, well, I want somebody in the friggin' sharks. And that's That's why everybody wants sharks. Okay, so there you go. No, it is a
I
neat
cannot
scene.
tell.
The estate is fantastic. It's not a set piece per se. Like they did it. That's an actual estate down there. And so when you look at the background, you look at the ocean, you look at the trees and stuff. You're like, oh, okay, there you go. It's just like I say, it feels like you're there, especially at that time. It really gives you a sense of the time and place for it. And you feel drawn into 1964, 1965-ish Bahamas and all that. And a lot of films today don't do that because they're all CGI'd and whatnot too. But what were you gonna say?
I was going to say I can't tell you how relieved I was because Bond, in that scene we talked about before, when he went in the hotel room, he was calling for Paula. He thought Paula was in there, and I thought when there was clattering in the book, the recording device, I was worried that Paula maybe got the axe, but Paula's okay for now and goes with Bond to this rendezvous to meet with Q. And I know this isn't one of your favorite segments because Q's out there with all the tech for him.
Q is phenomenal, and their banter is great, and I think it's
and he's
awesome.
in an island shirt.
He is. I mean, and he wasn't a young guy when he did these Bond films. He did it up until 1999 with The World Is Not Enough, I believe was his last film. And since then, it's been a major loss for the Bond franchise, in my opinion, going on over 20 years now. He brought the goods and all that. I mean, but see, look, he's now a major side figure in the Bond films where he wasn't even with the first one, at least. But here he's given Bond stuff he would need that's for his mission. And it makes sense in that he's got like something that acts as a Geiger counter, and you can take pictures and stuff too. So it hasn't got completely outrageous yet, but I like how he doesn't put up with any crap, and he always talks about taking his work seriously. I like that. That's cool. He gets the rebreathers and all that, which of course he's going to need. But it's like the car stuff is what I really hate. But
well, there's no car.
It's a reason to meet him, and it would become something to do. Well, I'm talking about the intro thing there was with the water and whatnot too. That was just unnecessary. But moving right along here too, we get to see that awesome war room from MI5 with giant maps where all they're pointing at stuff, and a bunch of people in wonderful looking suits standing around looking important, taking phone calls off corded phones, listening to more reel-to-reel update stuff. It's just phenomenal. This is incredible stuff. They seem generally concerned, whereas everybody in today's movies dress really hot and they don't do anything. But Bond's getting suited up. We cut back to him at night. He's going to check out Largo's boat, his yacht, the Disco Volante. He goes underneath and he does his spy stuff. And this is kind of neat too, because a guy comes out to try to attack him. Bond gets away. They've got him on video camera stuff. This is Bond underwater is basically what it is. And he's just doing his surveillance. They turn the lights on. Bond manages to get away. It's cool. It's spy stuff. Bond is at his best when he's got to do some spy stuff, where he's got to go out and do it. He ends up swimming to the shore. This is at night where he comes up. It's really neat. He flags down a lady in a car who coincidentally is somebody we saw before. Take it from here.
Yeah, and I love this scene because Fiona is the one who's there. I don't know how she arranged that to happen, or if it's just by pure coincidence. But she says, "Yeah, she'll go ahead and give him a ride," and she starts speeding up to speeds that are ridiculous, and you can see Bond a little worried, and then he notices the ring on her finger, and
the SPECTRE ring, the octopus.
Yeah, and
we saw that on Largo during the casino scene. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's fine because eventually, even though she keeps going and speeding, and he's getting a little concerned, she does stop at the hotel, saying that's as far as she goes because she's staying there. And I don't know if you noticed this, because Bond says afterwards that after she says, "So some men just don't like to be driven," and he says, "No, some men just don't like being taken for a ride." His accent it slips in there.
Oh yeah,
but that's just a little fun tidbit right there.
Yeah, they do the quick data analysis of Bond's photos, and then we cut to the next day. We're flying around in an overhead shot.
Papa.
It's like a drone shot, except for drones really weren't around there too, of Bond checking stuff out. And he's just, again, doing spy stuff, checking out some of these keys, looking out for stuff, and they think they find it. But this is kind of interspersed with the estate of Largo, where they're going everything. I think it's called Palmyra, and I think it's obviously a real one, but it's just beautiful. He's doing the skeet shooting and everything too, and we'll see stuff like this later on in future Bond films. But Fiona's there again in an update too. One thing I have to say about Fiona, besides being absolutely a stunner too, she was a Miss France or Italy or whatever it was back in the day. She spends a lot of this movie not smiling and looks real serious, and she's just kind of badass for it too. It's not like angry or mean. It's no, I'm going to take care of business here too. She's not being a bimbo or a ditz or anything like that. It's pretty cool. She makes the most out of what she has with the role. As Bond's checking out the estate, and then he parks for lunch, and again, it's beautiful. He knocks at the door, he gets let in, so we get again this cat and mouse where each other knows what's going on. He does the ski shooting thing where he one-ups him in his own household. Domino's getting all wet. You see her in the background and stuff simply because she's got another older man that she can mess with. He meets Largo's celibate henchman, Vargas, who of course gets shit talked down even by his own guy there too. It's like Vargas is the real bitch in this movie if you think about it. But it's funny, you can see her kind of listening to stuff too. And again, she's a mistress. She's not anything. And then the scene where they're just talking to each other, one-upping it. Bond looks like he can't shoot. And he just shoots from the hip, literally, which is a much more difficult shot. And you're just watching the background. You're immediately sucked into this movie. It reminds you of just how awesome it is. And we get more sharks.
2 side notes. First side note, do you know what drink they have whenever Largo greets Bond?
I'd have to look at it. It's not an Arnold
Rum
Palmer,
Collins.
is it? A Rum Collins. Okay, gotcha.
In second, when Domino is there, they make a side note about, so what are your passions, Mr. Bond? And that's when he takes a long look at Domino, and that's when she looks up and she's silent for a minute, and then she says, I think I'm going to go change out of her one-piece bathing suit. Mm-hmm. And when she comes back, she's in a 2-piece. What was the
Florida
point
weather,
of her changing?
Caribbean weather. Show more assets. That's why. She knows what's up. Bond's here. It's time for her to show the goods.
Yep. And that's when Largo goes ahead and makes arrangements for Bond to take Domino to the festival in town. And that's when we quickly cut. And I'm going to go ahead and in Bond's room, we see Paula, the assistant, waiting just on the couch, reading something. And that's when Fiona comes in. She makes a mention of like, oh, well, I have a date with him too. It shows the room key. And that's when Paula is going into the other room. But then a bunch of men come out and they seem to take out Paula while they use chloroform because she was about to be suffocated with a pillow by one of the henchmen, but Fiona doesn't want her dead yet, so I suppose they're going to take her alive, but that's where she goes, and I fear for Paula.
Yeah, I like that the women just aren't a figure. Obviously, you can call a Bond woman a specific type of Bond woman, but even the side women that are in here like her, she's showing her chops. Because right now Largo's just a mastermind. He's not really doing anything. He's just the talking figurehead. They're like blah 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 blah, and she's really doing a lot of work. And Vargas is supposed to be, but we haven't seen it. So you could say it's a very feminist movie in that the women are driving everything here, or the desire to be with him in Bond's case. But even though Bond's, taking some agency and they figured out stuff and they're getting ready to do a nighttime surveillance of Palmyra, there's a scene where, again, they're here at night where he's taken her out. She's got this red dress on. I always liked how Bond integrated, allegedly, wherever they were going, customs of where they were at. And then here, we see whatever this festival is. And I'll say this, as much as the Day of the Dead's been celebrated, and we had a great Bond scene in one of the more recent James Bond movies that celebrated that, the long camera shot, CGI, and helicopter shootouts. Something like this, in a way, seems a bit more genuine because a lot of it is filmed with this going on in the background. It just seems to be a bit more intimate. And I'm not saying these other ones are bad by any means, but there's just something about that just makes you, like I say, make you feel and appreciate that they're there, where sometimes these big CGI spectacles, even though it's a cool idea, it leaves you wanting more, I think. But Bond does prep because he's being called away or whatever, and you see him doing a little nighttime surveillance work over the place too. And this is the scene that I just love it. It's at night. He's sneaking around the place. He's checking out stuff. This is where eventually he ends up getting trapped in the water with the sharks. People are shooting at him. He's got them shooting at each other. He's climbing all over the roof. This is just a nice little cat and mouse chase thing. It's not over the top with tons of gadgets or whatever, but what does Bond have that we know from Q? He's got the rebreather. So yes, it's an overly elaborate death, if you will, or they close it or whatever. But it's cool just to see him visually go through it and see the sharks go passing by after he defeated the one guy, and the sharks, of course, smell blood in the water. It's just really badass. And apparently, Connery wanted plexiglass put up because he was afraid of it, and I guess it almost did attack him or something. But
yeah, reading that, he was scared of sharks. He was terrified.
I don't blame him.
And
how many people outside of Jacques Cousteau really had that much experience with sharks? Down here in Central Florida, we know that they come all the way up to shore, basically. And during the summer, it's not uncommon to see them while you're out on the water. And people forget, go, oh my God, you have to go out deep to see sharks. No, they're everywhere. When you see drone shots now, especially on the beaches here in Florida, they're always there. It's just like gators. It's nothing that we think of as being a big deal, but it was a really neat little spy thing for him to deal with. And eventually he does escape, and he gets back to his room where, of course, he sees a beautiful woman in there. So I jumped ahead, and so I'll pause right here and let you catch up.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, you pass by because Paula is dead. She takes a cyanide capsule that she had implanted. So it's very sad. But our sadness doesn't last long because we're quickly distracted by Fiona. Yes, she's in the bath in what was once Paula's room, and she explains, she was moved here and she wants to get out of the tub. And that's when she asks Bond, can you at least give me something to put on to get out of here? And that's when Bond hands her shoes and then just sits waiting. Fiona, of course, covers with the towel on her head. That scene is actually where she's the thumbnail. The thumbnail has that scene right there because it is very influential. But this is where we see Fiona actually lead Bond. She seduces Bond rather than Bond seducing. So that was fun to see. And it seems that they are there for a while as the parade is going on until finally, after they are done knocking boots, they get dressed to return back to the parade. And that's when they open the door and men are outside waiting.
Vargas. Yeah. And she thinks she's got one up on Bond. And it's neat because, like I said before, Bond, you could make the argument over the past several films, gets a lot of stuff wrong or is not effective, because here he's actually basically caught. But again, it's a great little spy scene too, because when they get there, and again, it's late at night, it's dark out, he goes to this big escape scene in the car that they're driving to it, and they chase him, and he's got to get on he's bleeding because he'd gotten winged, I think. The bad guys are chasing him. She's there too. And this is just, again, a cat mouse, but it's a little bit different thing. It's making use of the parade that we see, the Junkaroo, I believe it's called. And we're just watching it. There's no dialogue. There's Bond struggling to get away, but he's been compromised. You see lots of shots of what's going on in the background. And, goes to the men's room to try to get a hold of himself on his leg or whatever, but he's been bleeding. They followed him. He's in a public place, so they won't really try something. They're waiting for him to leave, or they're going to try to squeeze him out. He grabs some random woman to start dancing with her. She comes in, and of course, you know, the music's playing. It's really loud. And this scene is kind of stupid and it's kind of dumb, but I like it. And I always had there. I don't know why. It seems like such a stupid beach scene, like we'd see 50 million places here in Central Florida. Everybody oohs and ahs when they go to Disney and all the theme parks, but to us, it's just another park. We're so used to it. And it's like this at the beach to me too. The music's playing real loud. They're focused on stuff. You see Vargas popping the gun up, or a henchman, I should say, through some sheets. He's looking around. He's being aware of his surroundings. She basically knows he's going to get whacked. And at the last minute, he turns around, and she's got this beautiful blue dress on, she's got this boa, and he ends up basically putting her in the way of the gunshot, which nobody hears because it's a loud party. And of course, you know, he puts the scene I like is where he puts his fingers to cover up the bullet hole, and you see just a little bit of blood, and then he sits down with some random couple and says, my friend says this out, she's just dead. I'm like, that's so horrible. It's such a bad line.
It's
but I love
wonderful.
that scene. It's awesome.
It's fantastic.
It is. I mean, after that, you basically get the countdown with, you know, MI6 about, oh God, we got to pick things up, and they cut the bomb the next day. He's got the fake stingray or whatever, and they actually find the location where they think the plane is that got knocked down. Because remember, they stole two, and they didn't know which is which. So Bond basically finds it, says, all right, let me go down there, and he dives down there, checks out. There's more sharks, and he's swimming around in a net. This is kind of cool. I've noticed that this stuff, when they do the underwater stuff, when there's light, it's a lot better to me than like the big dark scene we'll talk about here shortly. But he gets on the boat, finds out, or the plane that's submerged. He finds the watch, which of course is Domino's brother. That was the whole connection to this. It's not just that he's
in the dog tags.
Yeah, it's obviously convenient, but it makes sense with what he was doing. His sister, the Domino, that was with him, and that's how she met this older guy that she ended up being attracted to. Where she goes, strange, I was attracted to him then, you know, once. So make no doubt about it, it's that he's got that, and he basically sets off the plan of motion for the third act, where he goes to meet Domino to break the bad news to her.
Yeah, on the beach, he actually. He actually meets her underwater and like takes her down, and it's implied they enjoyed their time down by the fishes. He makes a note saying, "I hope the fish went to despair."
Well, he's got to suck some poison out of her foot because she stepped on something
afterwards,
or whatever.
Yeah. He steps on one of those egg spines, you know, the black ones with all those spikes sticking out of them. I wish I could remember the name. But he does suck the poison out and says, I'm sorry to hurt you this way, but I'm going to have to do it again. And she's like, what? And that's when she explains about the brother, even though it's not really the brother. That's something that sits with me. She doesn't learn how her brother really died, because this man in the plane had the tags and the watch, but it wasn't really him. But Bond makes his plea, and she agrees to help. A watchdog finally sees her from afar, and he's approaching with a gun. And as she agrees to help, that's when Bond takes a harpoon gun and fires it straight at him, and it sticks him to a tree. I'm not sure how
it's a cheesy ending to a good scene, because this is her all-time. She's just such a gorgeous woman, natural beauty. My God. And, you know, she's like, this is why you made love to me, and blah, blah, blah. And it's just, Bond's putting a squeeze on her, literally. He's like, look, he had your brother murdered. Now you can help me or not, but this is what's going to happen. He doesn't, of course, have to tell her everything else. He's found the thing that's going to allow him to work her and turn her into an asset besides sexing her up. And that's the thing that Bond does. And it works both ways. You know, the women do the seducing and so do the men. She's bored. She's looking for some excitement. She finds it. She just looks her absolute best in this scene. It's so gorgeous. But yeah, Vargas, who's just ranks very low in the piss poor henchman in the Bond films. But yeah, and what is it Bond says at the end? I guess he got the point or whatever. It's like, whatever. But this next scene, I really like this next one, because again, it's not high-tech stuff. It's not a big glass-filled office building. It's the estates where basically Bond's going to infiltrate what's going on with them moving the bomb here too. And it basically shows him just in his sandals and shorts, no sugar or anything like that, just running through the estate. And then he ends up basically realizing with the time, you know what, I'm going to join a group of people here that are changing here at dusk. He, karate chops one, judo chops one, and takes his equipment. So nobody really knows that Bond is a part of it. And then, of course, he had swallowed the pill that they can track him and everything, too. So now we're feeling that sense of, hey, this is the third act. This is the final thing going on. And all I'll say about this last little bit here as we get close off, we have a very long, extended underwater scene. Of course, Bond ends up saving the day. This was just basically
Hello there. It seems that my co-host Rob has cut out. I didn't realize that. I don't know what exactly he was talking about, but yeah, he was talking about how extended this last scene is. Overall, it's just drawn out to a point where it feels a little unnecessary to me. Not sure how Rob feels about that. But I didn't need the underwater harpoon warfare that comes in at the end because the Coast Guard is ultimately sent there. Eventually, Bond gets on the boat. And when Bond gets on the boat, he is facing off against the men. He's fighting 3 of them at once, but it seems Emilio's about to have the upper hand. He has the gun in his hand pointing at Bond. He's about to shoot, finish him off right then and there. And that's when, who do we see but Domino come up with the harpoon gun shooting straight through Emilio. It was good that she got the final death because in that scene on the beach we talked about just a moment ago, she had asked Bond to go ahead and kill Emilio. That's his promise, but she got to finish it, and that's what's important. And I see my co-host has returned. Hello there.
Hey. So what was the last thing you heard?
Well, I'm trying to remember because you were talking about how extended the underwater scene was, yes. And I was saying how I agreed, and we got to the point where, well, she shoots Emilio with a harpoon gun.
Yeah, again, a woman saving the day, literally. I mean, that's kind of what we're getting used to. Women have a very substantial role in James Bond films, and that's nothing to be taken lightly. So yeah. We can argue, later on sex roles and whether they're prevalent or not, but this is mid-60s, whatever, it works. Beautiful film. For my final thoughts, I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. I think it is just a popcorn Bond film. The scenes to it aren't done horribly. I can have minor quibbles about some things that I may not overly love due to my preferences from what I've seen so far out of these 4 Bond films, but it's a great film. When we get done with the Connery films, we're going to rank them before we get on to the Moore films and then rank those too. But yeah, definitely a fun movie. I'm not going to say it's an improvement over the last film, over Goldfinger, which I think each film had improved up to this point, but this is certainly no loss either. What's your final take on the film?
My final take is, well, first I want to mention, because Bond does have to be rescued in this movie. He didn't in From Russia with Love, because they didn't need to come pull a plane out and go ahead and get him out of the ocean or from the woods. But this is the only one in which he's rescued, and he doesn't end up just cutting off the rope and enjoying his time with his lady there. But my final thoughts for this movie is it is really a lot of fun. I don't know if I enjoyed it more than Thunderball. We're back to Spectre, and that could be a good thing. That could, well, no, it's an evil thing, but it could be good for the story to go back to them. But I don't know. I really do enjoy the cast. I'm glad that even though she did die in this movie, I'm glad that Paula got a chance to come back into here and really just change her role from last time. She had a shine, and I'm going to miss her.
Yeah, it's a fun film. It'll be interesting to see what happens when we go to rank them for our reasons why too, because it's got all the stuff we like, and it's like, yeah, this isn't going any way now, and this is a monster. Like I say, it was the most profitable one up until maybe Skyfall or Spectre. I mean, in terms of being adjusted for inflation, you can argue these things until you're blue in the face. But this is before United States got off the gold standard. People would argue, well, how can you really figure that out? Monster hit. And we can see why. It's a fun action movie, and it's better than a lot of stuff that's out there today, despite it maybe looking and being written in a dated manner. Not a lot of Cold War stuff, not a lot of topical political things going on other than a bad guy with this company trying to do something, and kind of that's all you really need too, so we'll see how this continues into Bond's fifth film, which we'll be covering in about a week here too. So Pixel, thanks for showing up as well. We've got some really massive electrical storms going here in Central Florida too. I got dropped there for a little bit, but thanks everybody for checking us out, listening. Getting ready to go live here in a few moments to cover Sean Connery on Two for Tuesday with Outland 1981. It's a sci-fi western. It's not really even science fiction. It just has a setting like that. Great film as well, too. One of Connery's better acting jobs, believe it or not. Looking forward to talking about there as well. So for everybody involved here at Xtreme Show, thanks for listening. Have a good night. As always, stay extreme.